Today's battle is with quantum dot mini LEDs, Hisense U8N versus the Samsung QN90D. Up next.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe.
Hey, what's up guys? I'm Brian. This is Tech Therapy. Thank you so much for joining me for today's battle. We have the Hisense U8N Quantum Dot ULED Mini LED versus the Samsung QN90D Neo QLED Mini LED. Both are Quantum Dot Mini LEDs as well as 4K flagships, but they're not really 4K flagships. They're more interim flagships. Now, why do I say interim flagships? The U8N is basically the consumer flagship. However, there is a U9N that's a little obscure, as well as the UX110. So for many of you, it actually is the flagship. The U8N is a fully spec'd, very high-end, excellent and amazing value for the money, even when it launches. The QN90D, on the other hand, has really tough competition from its own siblings, namely the S95D QD OLED, S90D QD OLED, for around the same price as the S95D, as well as the QN95D, which is the true flagship. However, this time of year, the QN90D is actually an excellent value and something you should definitely consider. Without further ado, let's check out the Hisense U8N Quantum Dot Mini LED versus the Samsung QN90D Neo QLED Mini LED. Thank you so much for watching. All right, guys, let's do it. 65-inch U8N versus the 75-inch QN90D. We're checking the reflection handling in a very bright room. See the differences between a very glossy screen and Samsung's interpretation of a semi-gloss. More like a mirror on the U8N, even though it's not nearly as glossy as, say, an OLED or the Panasonic W95A. You can see how the lights are diffused on the Samsung. Here in the home menu, same thing. There are the lights. There is the diffused light. Now keep in mind, when the Samsung gets hit directly from bright sunlight, it does affect the contrast ratio and the blacks tend to raise a bit. But unless the sun hits it absolutely directly, which you're actually seeing some of that in this video, even with the lights on, it's still one of the best bright room TVs out there. Let's check out the design of both briefly. Pretty thin bezel on the QN90D metal stand. Small remote that Samsung is known for. You can recharge it. Where Hisense actually took a page out of Samsung's book, went to the center stand with one position versus what they had last year. Nice bezel as well, metal center stand, and probably the best remote in the business, backlit brush metal. Checking out the back, the Hisense U8N is more complex. It has that granular look with the subwoofer, much more simplified. Back to the QN90D, the audio is definitely better and louder on the Hisense U8N. As we move into our first demo coverage, we will start in filmmaker mode. Now, both TVs are very bright and look most similar in filmmaker, meaning the color changes quite a bit. Even though they are set the same, it's not the camera sensor, they look this way in person, more differently in other presets. So leaving them in filmmaker mode for the first few demos, They are both bright and punchy enough to still look vibrant and saturated. What I like about these comparisons with this content you're seeing here is they do look very different, but they are both very accurate. Now, in all the content that we show, we will be in a bright room, as I showed you already, in a regular lit room here. You're seeing some of the glare hit the QN90D, but we're going to be in very different lighting conditions. We'll move into dark room soon, but it's all about contrast ratio, local dimming, and the image quality, and also processing. Now I will show you all of the presets as we go through, and then I'll compare certain presets. Quickly, as we move into this famous LG demo, you see a little bit of highlighting on the right side of the Hisense U8N. Local dimming is excellent on both, and I mean very, very good. Samsung also is better than it used to be as far as dimming the image to compensate for blooming. It does tend to keep everything very bright. Samsung has really worked on maintaining that brightness and that vibrancy. Unless the screen is full of stars, will you see the TV dim to some degree. And it's very rare, where it used to be something that happened all the time. Now in real time, we'll go through each TV's presets. The presets are so important. With Samsung, you will have dynamic, you will have standard, you'll have cinema. Eco, funny enough, is actually brighter than every other preset other than dynamic. You will then have your filmmaker mode and obviously your game mode. Hisense has more presets. Now with Hisense, you have vivid, you have standard, you have sports, you have eco, you have HDR theater, and STR you'll have theater day and night. You also have IMAX and then filmmaker. Their eco actually does work. It does dim quite a bit. But we'll be focusing on 4 specific presets that match the Samsung, and I'll show you those in a moment. Now these will fade in and out instead of toggling the menu, which is arduous and takes a lot of time. But what's so important, as I mentioned earlier, is each manufacturer's flexibility of image and signature, where the Samsung, especially years past and now, more than years past I should say, is that you can get very vibrant, very poppy, very cartoony. However, you can make the image very accurate as well. They have that flexibility, and now so does Hisense. Very, very important. Hisense also has HDR 10 Plus, which I don't recommend for Hisense. It's much better on the QN90D. However, Hisense also has Dolby Vision. We're going to stay in dynamic and vivid for these next couple demos to see the brightness of both. So HDR 10 Plus on the Hisense is not very good. Dolby Vision is much better. Samsung HDR 10 Plus is the best in the business, as it's theirs. Now, as we move back into standard, I want to go over some pricing. I normally don't do this as prices change quite a bit. However, the QN90D released very expensive. This 75-inch right now is $17.99. It's the same price as an 85-inch U8N. That's where you're going to have to start comparing it. So for a 65-inch QN90D, it's $14.99, where the 65-inch that you see here, U8N, is $1,000. So you have to compare them that way. An 85-inch QN90D is $22.99, where an 85-inch, as I mentioned, is the same price as this 75. This is one of the best demos in the business from a good friend, Jennifer Gala, and her second channel, HDR Super Channel. Much love, Jen. Check out the local dimming on both of these displays. There's barely any blooming at all, and the trailing is minimal. For the Hisense U8N at this price point, the performance is absurd. But going back to the prices that I just discussed, that's where you can say, if the QN90D is better in these areas, is it that much better than the U8N in these other areas price-wise? Meaning, if you can get an 85-inch U8N, would you prefer that over a better 75-inch QN90D? Now, for me, size is king. However, throughout my time with both these TVs, the QN90D is overall just better in terms of its picture quality. It is a VA panel, where last year we had ADS Pro throughout Samsung's lineup scattered. Hisense is also VA, except the 75-inch is ADS Pro. I heard it does perform very well. Moving into this next demo, we're going to start in dynamic and vivid, then move into filmmaker halfway through, showing again flexibility of image. How can you be vibrant, poppy, very saturated? Check out the background, and then we move into the more realistic filmmaker mode. They both move together, meaning they both have the equal ability to go from super saturated to supernatural in just a couple clicks of the presets. Speaking quickly on operating system, you have Tizen from Samsung versus Google from Hisense. Tizen is superior. It is very easy to navigate, pick up right where you left off, especially in the game settings later in the video. Hands down, Tizen is better, snappier, faster. Now, while I'm talking, you'll see the differences in color. Those differences are in person the same way. It's not the camera sensor. This is how they appear in front of me, as if you were there. In other shots, they look exactly the same or nearly the same. What are your thoughts on the differences in image quality? For me, the QN90D is better overall in nearly every way. And as it should be, it is nearly double the price at many times, especially upon launch. But again, when you put value in the conversation, the Hisense is by far the better value. The prices are almost close and not really close at this time of year versus at launch, where it was much more expensive. So when seeing these demos, keep in mind value, value, value. What is more valuable to you? Is it the better image quality, perhaps the better operating system? Depending on your use case, they're both very bright, very vibrant. Now we're moving into a more movie scene from our good friend Jennifer Gala. Again, special shout out to Jennifer Gala. Special shout out to all of you guys watching these premieres live, the entire community. Also, a special shout out to my favorite couple, Beverly and Matt. They wanted a shout out, and the shout out is here. Love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Love the entire community. It's why I leave these videos long, not only so you can see the TVs, but so we can actually hang out and watch and chat together. And if you'd like to see this demo material, go in the description and you'll find Jennifer Gala and HDR Super Channel, links to her channels. You can also become a Patreon on Jen's channel and download any of these in full Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos. Now back in the filmmaker for the color portion where it's about accuracy, but you saw the color differences in the last sci-fi, like post-apocalyptic settings look very different. That's how they look in person. The Samsung is always warmer. Now the presets are perceptually matched. Also, the color temperatures are matched. There's nothing I could do to make the Hisense warmer other than being in filmmaker where they are more comparable. But the Samsung was always more warm and had a warmer look to it. The Samsung QN90D is going against the Sony Bravia 7 next. Then the Hisense U8N is actually going against the Samsung QN85D, which is also a credible value and a step below the QN90D. Very interesting battles coming up. What are your thoughts on the differences between the two? Are they close enough? Would you rather have the larger Hisense? They both have excellent gaming features, which we'll go over shortly. But what are your thoughts as you're looking at the content? What do you guys think? Now, while you see me jumping presets, I can leave them in Filmmaker, give you a 10-minute video and call it a day, or make one look like one or the other. My goal here is to give you 20 plus minutes of these TVs being pushed very hard and content that goes above 5,000 nits. Also being able to show you standard, dynamic, vivid. A lot of you guys like those presets. There's a certain group that likes accuracy. I have that group covered as well. However, I'm not here to just cover one specific group. You're seeing me go from very saturated in this demo to the end, moving more into IMAX and movie, something more accurate. So matching them and also showing you the strengths and weaknesses of both. However, they both are excellent. I would say if there's a weakness for the Hisense is probably up conversion isn't quite where it needs to be in comparison to the Samsung. Samsung is still better processing wise slightly. And HDR10 Plus, I'm not a fan of how it looks, especially on Prime, or I should say on Fire Stick, on Prime, I should say. I don't love the way it looks there. Dolby Vision is better. Obviously, HDR10 Plus is better on the QN90D from Samsung. So it's hard to say that HDR10 Plus is a huge addition for the Hisense. Otherwise, they are both excellent. You're seeing exactly what I'm seeing. They look very similar to what you're seeing here on camera. As I mentioned, the sensors aren't picking them up any different. Very tough demo here. Much cooler on the U8N, local dimming better on the Samsung QN90D in spots. However, you're seeing the QN90D being very bright to where it's clipping. But they both handle this demo amazingly. Here's the black bar test. Both are in standard. Both look great dead center. We're gonna go off angle, and then you can see some of the handling from the QN90D in one real spot. But you have to be up and looking down, so you're off angle and then away from the center. Look how much cooler the U8N is. But off angle, it's actually better. A little bit of the purplishness there, a little bit there at the top. Now, I don't raise the exposure to make it more bloomy because it makes no sense. That's all you'll see. This is what I see. And again, they both look very good. I am way off angle. And the Samsung looks excellent as well. And that pinkish and cooler tone, I could not change on the Hisense. It's not visible unless you see these TVs together. Moving into gaming. Both are amazing for gaming, having 4K 144 Hertz. However, the Samsung has 4 HDMI full bandwidth 144 Hertz. The Hisense has 2. Now here you have Original, which is the most natural preset from gaming, against one of the more poppy presets from Hisense, and I'll show you in a minute why I do that. Now, from every manufacturer, the game mode most likely isn't the best looking, as a lot of the processing is disabled. Samsung is the best in the business, followed by LG in having flexibility of image. With the different presets available within, and I'll show you that momentarily, within Hisense, is you're still limited to how much the image changes. Not so with the Samsung. You can change things quite a bit. So what I'm showing you here is one of the more vibrant presets from Hisense versus one of the more natural presets from Samsung, the Q90D, meaning they look almost equal here and very similar. A little bit more saturated on the Hisense. We'll come back to Tekken shortly, and I'll show you more footage that looks very different, but they both look very good here. I would say there's more clarity on the Samsung, I think, due to processing being enabled. Moving into Street Fighter, same thing. We're staying in Original and Standard. There are more presets. I'll go through those through the Hisense and on the QN90D Samsung. Now I can say that, again, the processing for me is clearer and better on the Samsung QN90D as far as the game mode. Moving into Horizon Forbidden West, we're going to bring up both game bars. The game bar from the QN90D is one click away, where you do have to go into the settings and then go in and find the game bar for the Hisense. Now, both have separate presets within game mode. I'm only covering within game mode, as every manufacturer lets you leave game mode. However, input lag and latency becomes unbearable unless you add motion interpolation. Now, the Samsung has many more options, namely Game Motion Plus, which is phenomenal, where you can actually add frames without adding lag. That's something that no other manufacturer has, and definitely gives the advantage to Samsung. In terms of the presets, they can each be customized, and each one can look very different from the other, where the Hisense has other presets. However, they do look very similar. And momentarily, I'll go through different settings that can make the Samsung look very different than the original preset, which is the more natural. Think of that as being their filmmaker mode. Now, other manufacturers, almost all of them, even OLEDs, tend to disable things like dynamic contrast or active contrast. Samsung used to do the same thing, not now. That setting is still here, and it also doesn't add much lag or latency, meaning you can go into low and it'll change the image quite a bit. The downfall to that is you have to change the settings almost for every other game, because they can look great on one game and not on the other. However, you do have that flexibility. Again, you also have HDR10 Plus gaming on both. I like it much better on the Samsung. There's also a feature on the Samsung which is almost like HGIG, which looks like original but a little bit more poppy. And the presets for the Hisense can at times look a little bit faded when they're not being compared to another, but there is more clarity on the Samsung. I think that's more due to processing. Both excellent in terms of their gaming options. Now I'm going to go into the Samsung menu and I'm going to take that original preset and I'm going to change it. And I'll show you the little things that you can still change that the other manufacturers really don't let you. Other than the clarity settings, which are motion, look at the differences between contrast and enhancer. You can then change the tone mapping from active to static, massive difference. So you can take a very cool preset, warm it all the way up, and then all of a sudden have it look much more vibrant, even though it's the most accurate. So having that ability is unique to Samsung, more so than any other manufacturer. This is why I think they're leading the way in terms of gaming. It's not only their performance, it's the ability to change the image a ton to give you that many more options per game. Now this is where I'm going to go back into the menu and show you the little bit of differences by changing just that one little setting. Now I'd show you that on the Hisense, but they're all grayed out. That is very important depending on your flexibility and what you want your games to look like. For me, I love having as much control as possible as I game on console and PC. I like certain games to look a little more crushed, a little more vibrant, a little more natural. With the Samsung, you have both, and it's excellent. Best gaming platform in the business, I think, is Samsung, closely followed by LG. But again, for the Hisense, for the value, 144 hertz, very good PC and console gaming, and keep in mind it has a better sound. So Hisense, an excellent gaming TV, just not have a lot of flexibility of image. As you look at the standard preset now, a more poppy, vibrant preset versus the Hisense most poppy preset. And the Hisense just can't look like the Samsung, but the Samsung can look like the Hisense. Very, very important depending on your style of gaming. But once you throw value into it, if that's what you care about, the Hisense is the clear choice. You could have an 85-inch Hisense U8N versus the 75-inch for exactly the same price. So think about that for a second, and you will see that even that changes as you get into immersion. That can change your decision, especially in terms of value. As you see me move back into original to then match the Hisense, but it's even a bit more vibrant, having the more accurate preset. In closing, both are excellent. However, the Hisense U8N's value to performance proposition is off the charts, one of the best in the industry at that. However, I would favor the Samsung QN90D in nearly every shot. However, is the price difference worth it to you? I'm Brian. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing. Love you guys. Take care.
It's better to burn out than to fade away. There can be only one.